Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressing the party workers, the hundreds of them who had gathered at the large BJP headquarter office, the office itself completely decked up. This is usually the victory event, but like Prime Minister Modi pointed out, the BJP President JP Nadda has now made this a thank you event. Thank you to the party workers and thank you, of course, to the voters. Just to quickly take you through the key takeaways, Prime Minister Modi interestingly has reaffirmed faith in Nitish Kumar. Nitish Kumar, who just a short while ago finally broke his silence about the results and tweeted, but has otherwise been largely absent since last night, since the results became clear. But he said that the NDA will work under Nitish's leadership in Bihar. The other part was him acknowledging where the victory also came from, or the final where they got the edge and the final booster shot, which is the women voters of Bihar. Those are the ones who turned up in larger numbers, and those are the ones who voted in larger numbers for the NDA. And that's what he's acknowledging. And a clear message for the next round of elections and for the next rival who will be on the target list, that's Didi, Mamata Banerjee. Prime Minister Modi also saying that political killings taking place in some parts of the country is completely unacceptable. Political killings are unacceptable in any democracy, and I am not issuing any kind of threat, but the voters will send a message to those who resort to such tactics. So those were largely what he said. He, of course, first spoke about the overall results that included BJP's performance, even in the by-polls, has also been great. And, of course, the fact that they've come back to Bihar along with Nitish Kumar, that being the big one. Good evening to you. Thank you so much for being with us here on the Urban Debate. We're going to put the spotlight on the Bihar results. We're also going to deep dive into some of the numbers, the analysis, and bring you interesting points and insights as to how is it that the NDA pulled this off? How is it that the NDA beat a 15-year anti-incumbency sentiment to come back to power? It's largely a victory for the BJP. What does it mean not just for the state of Bihar, but even for national politics? So the next 1 hour, 45 minutes, that's going to be a focus. But first up, I quickly want to get a quick comment from Vinay as well on what Prime Minister Modi said. Vinay, the interesting part that we were talking about, women voters, and how, yes, traditionally they have been a strong vote bank for Nitish, but this time perhaps a lot more.
A lot more probably also for the BJP. I mean, Mr. Modi has always had appeal is the women. In fact, that started in Gujarat. If all his victories, women overwhelmingly supported him. So he's got that connect. And I think, obviously, remember that a lot of the welfare schemes that the central government now uses, and remember also in the last 6 years or so, there has been a centralization of welfare schemes that has happened. They tend to benefit the women a little bit more than the men. I mean, whether it's the Ujjwala Yojana or whether it's the, the toilets that are being built or the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, they have a direct impact on the way women think about it. The one issue where the local government's performance impacts the women much more is the law and order issue, because that, of course, is another issue where women do feel the difference. And I think in this case in Bihar, all of them got combined. Remember, a woman of the house in states like Bihar or UP commands even the economic difficulty impact is felt by the woman the most. Ultimately, she has to provide for the family, and she has to look after the children, and she's the fulcrum around which everything else, while the jobs impact the men much more. So women have always been in support, and I think in Bihar, both JDU and BJP being together in many seats, that kind of ensured that the women vote only benefited them.
Okay, and what was interesting is that while Nitish has been largely absent through the day, hasn't made any comments, hasn't been visible, but there was a brief mention of Nitish Kumar in the Prime Minister's speech. Will this maybe put to rest certain speculations, Vinay, or will those speculations about Nitish's future really continue?
Nitish is a very difficult person to read. He's a bit of a recluse, doesn't talk to people, doesn't meet anybody, especially after election results. And I am actually the most interested in now watching what Nitish does, first in the immediate future, and then of course what the BJP does to Nitish in the medium to longer term future. I'm very, very curious to see how Nitish takes this. Does he accept and continue as the CM of Bihar, which he may? But you never know with him. It's quite possible that he may, he may just start saying that the mandate was actually more for the BJP, and that as the senior alliance partner, they should have a crack at it, and I need to be away. You never know with him. I mean, as I said, this is speculative because it's very difficult to read Nitish's mind. He's a man who just decides for himself, and there's very little that anyone else in the party will know.
Okay, so let's get to the larger conversation points as well. The big takeaways from the Bihar election results. Of course, last night it was all about what was still happening, the counting that was still going on. And while we did discuss some of the takeaways and some of the data available at that point of time, because there was no certainty, we decided we should also do a deeper dive today. Now, just to put it simply, and I'm not quoting statistics right now, we will get into the numbers in just a bit, but essentially what worked for the NDA, like you heard even from the Prime Minister, the women and the youth that came out in large numbers to vote, that was essentially one of the strong points, and that gave the NDA a larger edge versus their rival parties, a higher percentage of women that voted in favor of the NDA. In fact, a higher percentage of women who came out to vote, and that the statistics show that about 5%, there was a 5% increase in the women voters this time. And that is estimated to also, a large chunk of that may have gone just to the BJP. The fact that Prime Minister Modi's popularity continues and the push that he gave, especially in the second and the third phase, more importantly, is also something that many experts say has helped. Polarization, their star campaigner, Yogi Adityanath campaigning, seems to have helped the NDA solidify its position even in regions like Simanchal, in constituencies which are Muslim dominated, apart from what, of course, what the AIMIM won. But the Hindu vote consolidation has happened to a certain extent. And the NDA's constant reminder to everybody about Jungle Raj during Lalu's era, and if Tejaswi comes back, that may happen again. Perhaps that somewhere has also worked. The fear and the shadow of the Jungle Raj seems to have played on the voters' mind as well. So even though people were curious about Tejaswi, he managed to draw in large crowds. It didn't really translate into as many votes as he would have hoped for. A division in the core vote bank for the Mahagathbandhan. And this is something that we will touch upon a lot more, how AIMIM and Asaduddin Owaisi seems to have dented what would have otherwise been votes for Mahagathbandhan. At least 5 to 6 more seats they would have managed to pull off. And so that is a conversation we will have. One thing, yes, despite the fact that these were COVID times, despite the fact that these were tough economic times, a lot of people are saying that the centre's own welfare schemes, and many of which have been successfully implemented in Bihar, have also helped people. So while they may be angry with Nitish, or they may be upset with Nitish's government on many other fronts, they do see the fact that the centre worked a lot, and the centre has taken quite a few steps to help the people. Maybe that was one of the reasons. But for that exact purpose, I actually have experts joining us this evening as well. So Aarti Jairaj, senior journalist, is with me. Yamini Iyer, President and Chief Executive of the Centre for Policy Research. Nilanjan Sarkar, Assistant Professor of Political Science at Ashoka University, also joins us this evening. Of course, Vinay continues to stay with us. Aarti, let's start with you. And just a quick comment first on what you think really worked for the NDA, especially keeping in mind that Nitish was looking at a 15-year long term anti-incumbency factor.
Yes, in fact, all the reports from Bihar suggested that, that there was a very strong anti-Nitish wave building up. And then when the exit polls came in and they gave Mahagathbandhan the edge in the elections, we thought that's what had happened in Bihar, and clearly that's not what happened in Bihar. I think what happened really is that the people voted largely on caste lines, on traditional caste lines, and the BJP's caste alliance, basically the upper caste, it helped pass the BJP. Nitish Kumar's EBP, Mahadalit Social Alliance that he has painstakingly built up over the last 50 years That stayed with Nitish. And of course, as far as, RJD's efforts to expand beyond the MY traditional base of the RJD, it worked to some extent, not enough really to push him over the finishing line. And of course, women vote, which has been Nitish's traditional strong point, and also Narendra Modi, that stayed with the NDA largely. And maybe this whole, recalling of Jang Raj by the PM and by Nitish worked with women because, as you know, women are always bear the brunt of poor law and situation. So that women both stayed with them. And so I think that's exactly what happened. And I just want to make one point, which is slightly controversial, that I think Nitish was really done in these elections. And if you look at the way the LJP has cut into votes in something like 29, 30 constituencies, which could have been won by the JDU, and the BJP didn't do anything to stop the LJP from, posing this challenge. So the fact that Nitish has managed to win 43 seats despite being hit out from all sides by LJP, by BJP workers, by Tejasvi Yadav, despite that, managed to win 43 seats and he more or less held to his vote base. I think that is a remarkable achievement by Nitish Kumar, and it is something that BJP will have to keep in mind as this government moves into its fourth term and we see how the equations between the BJP and Nitish play out.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, since you brought it up, let me just quickly get in a comment from Vinay as well, and we'll pull up that data also for our viewers. We've put together, data specifically for at least 7 of the constituencies where LJP managed to pull in a significant number of votes, and RJD lost by a very small, and JDU lost by a very small margin to the RJD. So effectively, if LJP had not been there, maybe JDU would have won. And we kept talking about this, Vinay, through the last few days as well, of whether the damage will be just to the NDA or just to JDU or NDA, and it looks like it's just to Nitish.
Yes, I mean, look, they played a high-risk game and they won. In UP and Bihar, if you travel, around our hometowns, we grew up kind of hearing everyone, including the local politician, who would say that Rajniti satta ke liye hoti hai, and it's not an idealism's game. It's a fair game as long as I win the game. They played a high-risk game. There's no doubt about that. The BJP's game of propping up the LJP, I mean, Aarti said controversial. Actually, it's an absolute truism. There's no other way of putting it, but the fact that the BJP ensured that the LJP was put up in those seats and ended up damaging the JDU way more significantly. But having said that, I think the larger takeaway for me is this, and the JDU should have seen that coming. Nitish should have seen that coming. There are two things. BJP as a party and Mr. Amit Shah and Mr. Modi as the political numero force in India do not forgive and they do not forget. That is part one. That's the way they have been. That is part A. Part B, I think it is now completely established that the BJP does not need the NDA. This was probably the last nail in the coffin of NDA. I don't know how many people realize it, that at the center, the only NDA is currently Ramdas Athavale. There is no other NDA.
Yes.
So it is a BJP government. There's just one token presence of Athavale. You remove him from the cabinet and there is no other party there. So the NDA is over. It is really now about BJP, and the party is now doing everything possible. The Bihar was actually the only citadel left where they were the junior partner or where they were dependent on another partner. And it's been their long-standing dream to ensure that they muscle in and ensure that the JDU's vote bank ends up, crossing over to that side. And I can bet my last dollar that over the next 2 years, the BJP will actively work at not only destabilizing the JDU further, but also the LJP. Chirag Paswan is a young leader and he doesn't know what is coming for him next.
What he's gotten into.
So, however, I mean, of course, Tejasvi is here for a while. I mean, he's certainly signaled his arrival.
Yeah.
But that's the way the BJP politics is. They play to win and they like to dominate it. They are not the ones who are going to share power and allow you a longer reign, for a very long time.
Okay, let me see and check with Yamini if she disagrees on this hypothesis. Good evening, Yamini. Do you believe this is what happened? BJP and Team Amit Shah, JP Nadda, Narendra Modi used Chirag Paswan well. It was a gamble, perhaps, or is it just Chirag Paswan who just went out on his own?
Well, I think this is going to be best answered by the players themselves, but it's certainly, I think, it's worth remembering, and I agree that the BJP's modus operandi is very much about centralization and about ensuring that they have full control. And I think the big success of this election is precisely that. In fact, Nitish Kumar is in a very weakened position. And what's been particularly interesting, and I know my co-author on this paper, Nilanjan, is also on this panel, and so he'll talk more about it. But the nature of this alliance was such that the entire anti-incumbency was very much Nitish's problem, whereas the centralized architecture of the BJP, and particularly its ability to use welfare schemes as a way of centralizing its politics and mobilizing mobilizing the electorate around it, has ensured that BJP and Modi in particular gets the credit, whereas Nitish Kumar faces the consequences of the anti-incumbency. And I think that, you talked about the post-COVID relief measures. I think what's particularly interesting about that is that the logical economic rationale of how to organize COVID relief would have meant decentralizing to states. But the politics and the political economy of it mandated that actually the central government centralizes the nature of the relief measures so that the political benefits of it go directly to the government. And we've seen exactly that. It's been very interesting that what we know of the data on the effectiveness of the post-COVID relief package is that the free food, the PDS system and the free ration was much more effective in reaching out to people than the cash.
Correct.
And in June, when the Prime Minister announced an extension of the subsidized ration under the PMGKY, it was extended till after the Chhat Puja in line with the Bihar elections, done precisely so that what was working, the credit for what was working goes to the Prime Minister, while what was not working is dealt with the local Chief Minister. And I think that Modi's welfare is extremely centralized precisely so that he's able to get credit for it. And this election has been yet another example of how that centralized politics works. It feeds into his popularity. It feeds into the trust dynamic that he has built with the electorate. And he gains while the state chief, in this case, even though he was in an alliance, loses out.
So, Nilanjan, where does that leave Nitish Kumar? The fact that he's clearly not now doesn't have the upper hand, will he be able to still be a chief minister who largely has to take instructions from elsewhere, from the bigger party in the alliance? Nilanjan, I think you're on mute.
I think only Nitish can answer that question. I think we don't know what he's thinking, but I will say this, right? I mean, unlike before, where you have an electoral leg to stand on, the truth is that in this election, the BJP had a strike rate of 67% and the JDU had a strike rate of 37%. You don't really have bargaining power, and you essentially have to bend to the will of what your major partner, and who is actually at the center, is going to ask you to do. In some ways, that is actually the most desirable set of that's the most desirable situation for the BJP. As Yamini just mentioned, right? I mean, the ability for Modi, because of his popularity, to essentially gain all the positives and leave all the negatives, anti-incumbency for the regional leader, is something that we saw in Bihar, but we've also seen it in Madhya Pradesh, we've seen it in Chhattisgarh. And so this is a situation that the BJP is actually quite happy with, right? Just one sort of final point here on this. When we talk about the bargaining power, why has it been cut out, and what was, sort of Chirag Paswan thinking? We know that it is a gamble that paid off on some level. Let me just give you some color on the numbers. Chirag Paswan put up 113 candidates against 115 seats the JDU is contesting. And if we just simply add the vote shares of the LJP and the JDU, and there, of course, never is perfect transfer. The JDU got 43 seats. Had we transferred all of LJP's vote share, it would have been 76 seats, a spoiler effect of 33 seats. Even if we assume only 50% of LJP's vote share sort of cuts across to JDU, it would have jumped up to 64 seats, a spoiler effect of 21 seats. So we know that, Chirag Paswan has to be kept in the fold electorally. And he may not become chief minister, he may not do all of these things, but he's proved his point. He is electorally important to the NDA. Nitish really can't do it without him. So his bargaining power is much lower. And, this is the way politics works. If you can't win elections on your own, then your ability to bargain within a coalition or to get things your way is severely diminished.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Vinay, you wanted to comment?
No, I just had a small point on the whole concept of anti-incumbency. And I tell you, I mean, my personal view is that I think we continue to look at anti-incumbency from a very traditional viewpoint. And I think that viewpoint is no longer valid. Yeah. And I'll give you an example, and I'll try and substantiate my point. Anti-incumbency is now becoming a lot like, and I'm giving a very crude example, but I'm doing it for the viewers' ease of understanding. It's like a lot like, assume that you need a pair of jeans and you hit the market and go and try and search for one. You need it. Your need is time bound. It's not something you can postpone. What do you usually do? You go around searching for the best option that you see amongst the ones available. It's never necessarily the perfect one. I'm increasingly of the view that anti-incumbency as a factor, the way we saw it traditionally, is not how it's playing out now. And partly the reason being that the opposition is now at a much weaker level in many, many areas. Today, anti-incumbency factors work if there is a credible opposition willing and waiting to occupy the vacuum. The presence of vacuum is a fact. There is vacuum in many states, and that's why you're seeing inconsistent results in different states. In Rajasthan, anti-incumbency set in the first term of Vasundhara itself. In Madhya Pradesh, it was there, but the opposition was divided. They were fighting amongst themselves. They couldn't take advantage of it. In Chhattisgarh, Congress ran a better campaign. They were able to win the state. In Odisha, it's not as if Naveen Patnaik's state is in a utopia, but he continues to win because the other parties have just not been able to come and occupy the vacuum. So I think anti-incumbency per se is not a factor. It becomes a factor when the dissonance that people may have or dissatisfaction they may have can be exploited and filled in by the opposition, which they perceive as compelling.
Yeah.
Now, in this case, I keep pointing out this again and again, that I think any smart political pundit will not only see how the BJP has gained in this election, but should also see how the left has gained in this election, because that is as much a story as is the right gaining in this election, because it tells you that the people are thinking in a particular way. It's a question of who can occupy that vacuum. It's a tactical arithmetical defeat for the MGB, and they should have seen it coming.
Okay, and I want to talk a little bit more about left. We'll get to that, and we'll pull out their victories as well. But quick comment from Aarti Jairath on the Chirag Paswan factor and the impact on Nitish. It's undeniable that a lot of the Nitish's loss is because of what LJP won and what they got. But from your own reading of Nitish Kumar, Aarti Jairath, do you think he's going to continue being the CM of an alliance where he doesn't have control?
It's very difficult to read Nitish Kumar, and I think most people have already said that on this panel. And you talk to anybody in politics, they'll tell you Nitish keeps his opinions to himself. Even his closest aides know what he's thinking. But the only thing I will say is that Nitish has a long memory and he doesn't forgive and forget. He doesn't. I'm sure he is aware of the way he has been undercut in these elections by everybody around him. His own allies, NDA, his partner, BJP, everybody has undercut him. And I don't think this is something he is going to be willing to overlook. Obviously he is the junior partner now in the equation. And I think for the moment, he will have to take a step back. I don't think he's going to give up the chief minister's chair because he knows he has to stay in power if he has to play a game, in the coming months. Once he steps back and lets the BJP take over the chief minister's chair, then Nitish Kumar becomes irrelevant. He will just fade away. So he will accept it. But I think he will bide his time and find a way of exacting revenge because I don't think Nitish is going to forget this. So how he will exact revenge, we'll have to see how things turn out. I think the real key to watch now in government formation is whether Sushil Kumar Modi becomes deputy chief minister again or not. Will the BJP allow Nitish to keep Sushil Kumar Modi as his deputy? Sushil Kumar Modi has been his main ally, his main interlocutor, his loyal aide right through his 15 years, right there by his side. And he has managed to keep the BJP under control. So will the Modi Shah BJP allow Sushil Kumar Modi back there again, so that the two form that team, which is a bulwark against demands from the center, demands from the BJP. And I think that's really the key to watch. And I think from then on, events will unfold themselves in Bihar.
Okay, so I do agree with you. Nevertheless, I wanted to try and see if anybody was willing to stick out their neck on Nitish Kumar and if we have any sense of what he might do. We'll wait and watch. The next 6 months to 1 year will be very interesting on how BJP now makes use of this strengthening of presence in Bihar. But let's move to the other aspect. That's beyond the NDA and what Vinay raised. Nilanjan, to what do we attribute the 16 seats that the left parties together managed to win in Bihar?
I think we always underestimate, how important the left is in Bihar. We know that traditionally the left has had a presence in Bihar. Now, obviously, they were in alliance this time. And, they were able to reap the benefits of the vote transfers that happened within the Mahagathbandhan. What I would say is just one sort of small point, right? And I think that we still, because we all do, I do as well, we're playing with big characters, Tejasvi, Nitish, Narendra Modi. We sometimes do underplay the sets of issues that voters are thinking about. As they're casting their vote. The reality is, yes, the Mahagathbandhan didn't pull it off, but this discussion of jobs and this discussion of economic distress, and yes, the costs most heavily fell on JDU and not so much on BJP, but those issues did matter to a lot of people. It did attract voters. And, when you have those kinds of problems and that kind of distress, I do think that the politics of the left does become attractive to a number of voters, right? I mean, if we're looking for the kind of politics of security and the politics of, sort of social welfare more generally and the kind of organization the left brings, there is something attractive there. Now, as I said, I don't want to overplay this because it's unlikely we would have seen these kinds of numbers without a coalition. But I do think that what the left represents can genuinely be attractive given what the history of the left is in Bihar and the kinds of distress that Bihar is facing today.
Vinay, your sense? And also I wanted to take it a step forward to say, can there be anything as a takeaway from here, or can there be any impact of what happened here in this region and how people voted in the next set of elections next door in Bengal?
Yeah, I mean, I think there will be some amount of, not direct impact, but there may be an impact on the kind of opposition politics that gets played out in Bengal. I do believe, Nilanjan is right, that the left benefited from being part of a coalition. But I am right now trying to do an apples to apples comparison by seeing that the third partner in the coalition has returned a very poor strike rate. Congress equally should have benefited from the coalition, and they weren't able to benefit from it. So it's also more than that. I mean, all three partners should have benefited from it. The RJD did hold on to some extent, but the Congress miserably brought them down. In fact, who knows, if the ticket distribution was slightly different, RJD may have performed a little differently. You never know. In fact, this election kind of confirms the feeling that a lot of people have had for a while, that Congress tends to bring coalition partners down. It happened in UP, it happened in Maharashtra when the NCP was on a recovery path, and now you've seen that happening in Bihar. Having said that, on Bengal, I do believe that the left might, you never know. In politics, it's quite possible that some kind of rainbow coalition of the left parties may actually almost come in and do a syncing with the Trinamool and then take on a united BJP, because that's going to be the toughest battle anyone has fought in that state. And I personally feel I can't rule that out when all these parties come together, something that was unthinkable a few years ago, to actually take on the BJP in Bengal, because it's likely it could happen, because this is a border region.
Right.
I mean, the Simhanchal region and some of the states, they border Bengal, and a lot of the Biharis in that region actually go to Bengal and for work and for various other things. So there is some amount of osmosis of thought that does happen from one place to the other. I think that there could be some bit of impact on that.
Could there be an interesting, could this become an interesting factor in Nilanjan? Aarti wanted to make a point first to you, and then I'll go to Nilanjan. Yeah.
It's interesting that Vinay should talk about this, a rainbow coalition on the left in some way supporting or getting into an alliance with the Trinamool Bengal. Because yesterday, Dipankar Bhattacharya, who, is a very important senior leader of the CNL, actually mentioned it in an interview where he said that, look, as far as we are concerned, we have identified the BJP as our main enemy. And that is why we decided to, this is the first time that the CPI-ML has actually got into an alliance with a mainstream political party. I mean, it's a huge leap for them to take the seat. And he said that left parties across, in Bengal and other parts of the country should, take a similar line and identify the BJP as the main enemy and make whatever necessary adjustments in their politics to fight the BJP. So he was actually hinting at the possibility of, he was actually encouraging the left in Bengal to, in some way tie up with the Trinamool so that they can put up a united front against the BJP in Bengal. So I don't know. I mean, politics is changing so rapidly. Who knows? I mean, things that were unthinkable yesterday. Yeah. I mean, the way the Shiv tied up with the Congress and NCP in Maharashtra, completely unthinkable, but it's happened. So, one doesn't know what will happen. The BJP has polarized the politics so much that things are changing.
So let me say this. Sometimes this experiment has worked when rivals of years together have come together to stop another third bigger rival, in most cases the BJP. But sometimes it doesn't work, especially in pre-poll alliances. Nilanjan, how does it work for the people on ground at the grassroots level?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, like we saw with SP-BSP, the left allying with Trinamool is quite difficult. This is, as we know, Bengal politics is quite violent. And these are cadres that have really gone after each other in the past. And we know that, for instance, the BJP has benefited from some of the cadres from the left moving over to their party. So, I think if we think about the impact of the left in Bengal, what I would say is that they do have a set of traditional voters still. They have some support. Organizationally, they're quite weak. And the kinds of places where we started seeing the left making, sort of having an impact, let's say in the 2019 national election, let's not forget, it's actually not a 3-player contest, it's a 4-player contest. Because the Congress and the TMC also can't really, they've gone together once, but it's not clear that they can go together either.
Right.
So Congress, left, Trinamool, BJP, right? You've got votes splitting in all different ways, especially in the northern part of the state. I think that on ground, the reality is that when cadres have that kind of history with each other,
right,
saw it with the left Congress alliance as well, it hasn't worked very well in Bengal. It's just extremely difficult, right? Because Ultimately, a lot of these parties are built upon these sort of local competitions. You can't just wish that away.
Yeah, and I think especially when it comes to the West Bengal, where the left and the Trinamool for so long, the on-ground cadre has seen each other as such hardcore enemies. I don't know, and if it's going to be a four-way fight, that just means somebody who's really good at arithmetic and candidate picking will probably come together. I know, Vinay, you want to make a point, but I'm completely out of time right now. We'll obviously continue this conversation at 9 p.m. as well, but at this point, I do have to thank Nilanjan and Aarti and Yamini for joining us. That being said, viewers, here are the key takeaways from Bihar. The fact that NDA 1 has a lot to do with Prime Minister Modi's popularity and with the success of the central government schemes even in Bihar. It also has a lot to do with the strong women voter base that not only has been a supporter for Nitish but also for the BJP, and together as more women came out to vote, that's probably helped them. And ND has always been good at arithmetic, at candidate selection, at looking at the caste dynamics and caste equation in every single zone. We don't know whether BJP intentionally did it, but the Chirag Paswan factor definitely seems to have helped BJP in reducing Nitish to a smaller player in the alliance. On the other hand, when it comes to Mahagathbandhan, Tejasvi may have the crowds coming in. He may have some young charm playing for him, some youngsters, following what he has to say, but he still has to battle his father's Jungle Raj shadow. He still has to get better at the arithmetic game, at the candidate selection, and probably negotiation with his own allies. Completely out of time. There's lots more on the other side, where we discuss the impact of Bihar verdict on rest of country and the national politics. Stay with me.